ERP failures are a common phenomena in the digital transformation space, but unfortunately, organizations have become normalized to this concept. But why is that, and what can you do to avoid that? That's what I want to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journey. And one of the things I've noticed in recent years is that organizations are afraid of ERP failure, but they also have a way of justifying and normalizing failure. And so what I wanted to do today is talk about why that is. Now, first of all, let's talk about failure rates. It's estimated that anywhere between 70 and 80% or more of ERP implementations fail. So you would think people would be pretty well on high alert that failure is a real option. However, a lot of times organizations justify the excessive spending or the excessive time it takes to implement, or the fact that there's a massive operational disruption at the time of go live. So what I want to do today is talk about and unpack why that is and how you can avoid that same phenomena, because at the end of the day, if you normalize failure, you're going to waste a lot of time and money, and it's going to become okay for you to go through a failure. So that's what I'm going to talk about here today. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent, technology-agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. I mentioned a moment ago that between 70 and 80% or more of ERP implementations fail. And actually, this number is likely to increase in the coming years, largely because so many software vendors are moving from their on-premise solutions to cloud solutions, and they're forcing their customers to do the same in a compressed period of time. And in that compressed period of time, there's a shortage of skills, and the industry simply can't keep up with the demand that's created for that movement to the cloud. And this is true mainly for the legacy on-premise solution providers, of course. There's other cloud solution providers that have already been in the cloud, like NetSuite and Salesforce and other solutions like that. But I'm talking mainly about the legacy on-premise solution providers that are sort of forcing this migration in a compressed time frame that is contributing to a high degree of failure. And the reason for this is not only the skill set shortage, but also the fact that so many organizations are rushing to an implementation, whether they're ready or not. And with that sense of urgency, a lot of times organizations are moving so quickly that they're not stopping to think, and they're not stopping to be smart about how they go through their digital transformations. So that's something that's really important to be mindful of, is you want to make sure that you're operating at your tempo and your cadence, and that you're taking the time up front to plan the way you need to. What's really important to make sure you do here is to not allow yourself or your team or your organization to assume that because we're all rushing to a massive migration in a short period of time, and we're all struggling with our implementations amongst our peers, it's important that we don't let this become the norm or let this be okay as part of what we expect to get out of our ERP implementations. And this is what I mean by normalizing failure. A lot of times organizations think that, well, that's just the way it is. It's sort of a foregone conclusion that we are going to fail, and that's not at all the case. There's a lot of things you can be doing to get more business value and mitigate risk in your digital transformation. Now, it also helps to back up and define what exactly failure means. For some organizations, the most important thing is that you implement on time, on budget. For other organizations, it might be that they deliver the most business value they could possibly get out of their system. For other organizations, it could be just don't screw up the operations of the organization and don't fail too badly. So I think the key thing here is to really recognize and articulate and identify what does it mean for us to succeed, and what is it that's unacceptable to us, and how do we define failure. For a lot of organizations, they might say that, well, if we implement on time, on budget, but we bring our operations to its knees because we can't ship product, or we can't close the books, or we can't run payroll, most organizations are going to consider that failure, but they don't stop to take the time to define that as a showstopper or something that's unacceptable, an unacceptable risk that they're not willing to take. So we have to define what failure means to us, and most importantly, what is that minimum level of expectation, that minimum performance result that we expect to get out of our ERP implementation. And we have to manage that, make sure we achieve that. And if we can't achieve that, or if we're at risk of not achieving that, then we don't go live. We don't turn the switch on without knowing that we're going to accomplish the goals that we've set out to achieve. And this is why it's so important not to focus solely on being on time and on budget, because sometimes being on time and on budget isn't the most important thing. It could be that what's more important is that you get the business value you need and you mitigate risk along the way. And sometimes that's going to cost you more money and take you more time than you might like, but it's going to cost you a lot less time and money than failing in your implementation. So be sure you have a clear understanding of what failure means, and more importantly, what does success mean to your organization. I talked about how important it is to define what failure means and what success means. And what I would argue too is that most organizations set their bars too low for what success means. Like I said before, most organizations, or a lot of organizations we work with, simply want to not fail. That's their definition of success, is don't fail. And to me, that's a really low bar to set. In fact, if you set the bar that low, you're going to shoot and aim that low, and you're probably going to fall short of that low bar as it is. So you might as well set the bar much higher and aim for a much higher degree of success, because at the end of the day, most organizations completely underperform and severely underperform what they could and should be getting out of their investments in technology. There's so much that most organizations aren't using and aren't getting out of their current technology investments, and they rush through the implementation, they get to go live, and then they move on to their day jobs and go back to their normal lives. And they forget that there's a lot of functionality they left on the table, a lot of business value they've left on the table, and a lot of operational inefficiencies that maybe they haven't fully worked through. So instead, you want to really set the bar higher and really paint a much clearer vision of what it is you expect to get out of this transformation and out of the implementation, so that you ultimately do get somewhere close to that business value. So it's important not to set the bar so low, which is what so many organizations do. Instead, strive to reach a higher degree of success and recognize that it's not impossible. In fact, it's quite achievable to achieve much higher degrees of success than your organization has seen in the past by simply following some of the best practices and the things that we know are destined to work in ERP implementations of any sort. So let's talk about some of the things you can do to avoid failure. There's a lot of different things, and I've put out a lot of videos about how to avoid failure and how to mitigate risk and that sort of thing. So I'll try to summarize here what some of those are, but you can also go to my YouTube channel and just search the word failure, and you're going to find a lot of videos about how to avoid failure. But I'll give you a summary here. One is to make sure you've got realistic expectations. If you start off with realistic expectations, you're much less likely to make some bad decisions later on. When you have unrealistic expectations, what ends up happening is you try to force fit an implementation into a box, a time and budget box that is not realistic to begin with, and you end up cutting a lot of things out of scope that are really important, things like change management or testing or training. You don't want to cut those things, but you end up having to because you never had a realistic time and budget to begin with. So realistic expectations is one. Number two is making sure that you're aligned as an organization, that you've taken the time to clearly define what it is you want to accomplish for this project, what it is you're doing, what you want the organization to look like on the other side of the implementation, and that you make sure you're all on the same page before you move too far into the implementation. It's amazing to me how quickly some organizations just jump into their ERP implementations and just rush into it without taking that time up front to define from the executive level on down, what is it we want to get out of this project? How do we define success? How do we declare victory? What do we want the operating model to look like? What do we want the organization to look like once we've gotten through the implementation? So that's the second thing, is make sure that you're all aligned and you have that clarity of vision as you go through the project. And then the third thing that I'd say that's one of the biggest three things you can do to avoid failure is to make sure you invest heavily in organizational change management. If you invest heavily in organizational change management in the people side of the technology implementation, you're much less likely to fail and you're much more likely to succeed. And you can learn a lot more about change management. I have my YouTube channel. In fact, if you go to this playlist right here, this is a change management playlist that has a tons of resources of information about how to manage change on your ERP implementation. So I hope this has given you some guidance on how you can avoid this phenomena of normalizing ERP failure and really open your eyes to what the possibilities are of success. And I think too often we're scared, and when we operate out of fear, we end up normalizing failure and just trying our best not to fail too badly. And so the key here is to recognize there are processes and systems we can follow to be successful in our implementation. In fact, if you'd like to learn what that system is, There's a video right here that I published recently on my YouTube channel. You can access it right here. It's about the system to digital transformation success, and that'll help you mitigate some of the risk that I've talked about here in this video. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. So instead, you want to really set the bar higher and really and to normalize. No, that's not. So I hope this has given you some good guidance on how to avoid, well, that's not what I want to say.